Hi YouTube, my name is Amos, and I'm making this video because I really wanted to apologize, and I wanted to explain myself. Now most of you that are watching this, you're not going to really care and it doesn't really matter, but I just felt like it was the right thing to do because I know there's a handful of you guys that have been supporting me since the very beginning for many years, and I just feel like I owe it to you to explain myself, what happened, what was going on, and even if you're a new follower and you don't really know me, I think this video is going to help you to understand me better and see why I am the way I am today. And you can choose to unsubscribe if you want after hearing everything. But I wrote this letter on the 23rd of August at 2:22 a.m. And I wrote this from about 2 a.m. to 7 a.m. So needless to say, I didn't sleep that night. I just couldn't fall asleep because I was collecting my thoughts on paper. And it's an accumulation of thoughts and things that I've been thinking about for the past 4 to 5 months. So it's not something that happened overnight. But on that specific night, on the 23rd of August, that's when I decided to just jot everything down so that I can just confess to you guys and explain what was going on. So this video is going to be very raw, genuine, and very honest. Now before I read this letter, I'm going to let you know that I initially wrote this on the 23rd of August, and I revised it a little bit for like grammatical errors and spelling errors. But for the most part, it's still the same letter that I wrote on the 23rd of August. So I'm just gonna jump right into it, and hopefully this explains everything. And one little disclaimer, it's gonna be all over the place. Instead of editing the letter as if it's an essay, I just decided to keep it as it was. So it's gonna be all over the place, but I just hope you get the main concern and the message of this letter. So a little bit about me. I started making YouTube videos in 2005 when I was just a young middle school kid. And at the time, I started YouTube because in school, I was considered one of the funniest kids in class. And all of my classmates considered me to be a future comedian and whatnot. And I decided it would be a great opportunity for me to share with the world my sense of humor and my antics and my funny side, so that I can make other people laugh as well and uplift others, not just my school. And that's the way I thought when I was 12 years old. So stay with me, okay? And I stayed on YouTube for about another 2 to 3 years, but then when I got into high school, I decided to delete my channel along with all the videos because, you know, when you're going through puberty, you start to care about what other people see you as and perceive you, right? You're worried about your reputation when you're a young teenager. So I deleted everything and I quit YouTube, cold turkey. And then after I graduated high school, I ended up joining the military. Some of you know that I went to a military university, and it was while I was there, I started up YouTube again, and the rest is history, right? So to sum it up, I've been doing YouTube from 2005 until the present day, 2018. That's a very long time. I grew up with YouTube. So ultimately, the reason why I decided to make this letter and especially this video to explain to you guys is because I took the time to go through all of my past videos, photos, posts, and etc. And as I spent time going through my past, I'm not even gonna lie to you and pretend to be like a false macho alpha male, right? I'm not. It really made me emotional to the point where I was teary-eyed just looking at what happened throughout the years to be where I am today as well. And just witnessing my journey, growth, and transformation, just seeing where I was back then and to see where I am today, it's really hard to believe that it's the same person. Because as I went through my past content, I got to see my personality shown on film and through pictures and through written posts. But in 2016, I changed. I was no longer this person that was just lighthearted, that had a sense of humor and just loved to have fun, but rather I started to become more aggressive and I was just straight up rude on the camera. Like, to be honest with you, in 2017 to about the summer of this year in 2018, I legit became a Pharisee. I became super aggressive, righteous, and I was just downright mean. Now, if you don't know what a Pharisee is a person from back in the day that was a religious leader. And they weren't exactly the most kind people around. And so with that said, I genuinely want to say that I'm really sorry. Like, honestly, I feel like a terrible human. By becoming a Pharisee, if I ever hurt any of you, I'm really sorry. I noticed what kind of monster I had become, and I just gotta say I'm really sorry, and I hope that one day you can forgive me, and if not, just know that I'm really sorry. Now, to understand why I became a Pharisee and how I became really religious, I really wanted to share a story with you. Do you guys remember that really big YouTuber named Kev Jumba? Like back in 2011, 12, and 13, he was one of the biggest YouTubers, right? But now if you look at Kev Jumba in 2018, he sort of fell off the map. What happened? So Kev Jumba actually got in a car crash or an accident and he got hit. And he had a near-death experience and he almost passed away. But it was exactly during that time that he went through a spiritual journey and he got in tune with his spiritual side. And when Kev Jumba got in touch with his spiritual side, essentially YouTube wasn't his highest priority because he was more focused on getting more spiritual. Now, similar to Kev Jumba, back in 2015 and 16, I went through the lowest moment in my life, and I'm not shy about it because through my story, I want to tell people and encourage them that it is possible to live to see a better day and that suicide is not the answer. So I don't mind talking about my past, even though I'm not exactly proud of it, it makes me who I am today. So when I was in the army, I was actually really freaking depressed to the point where I became suicidal. And it was in that exact moment that I embarked upon my own spiritual journey. But instead of becoming more spiritual, I ended up becoming really religious. And because I became really religious, I ended up turning into a hypocrite, judgmental, and overall, I was just aggressive. So in 2017 and 2018, that's who you see today. And that's not who I was back in 2011, 2012, 2013. Essentially, before I went through that depression and before I became religious, I'm not the same person. And I noticed what kind of monster I became. And it took me a long time and to do a lot of soul searching and to look at myself in the mirror and asking what happened many freaking times for me to get to this point, to wake up and get out of this spell. You see, when I became saved, which means when I became a Christian, I made the mistake of becoming religious. And when I became religious, I ended up becoming narrow-minded, like closed-minded and ignorant. And when I became a Christian, I legit thought that I can only be happy if I become a pastor and that there's no other way to shepherd God's people or to minister towards them or to evangelize or to love people. I thought that the only path for me when I became a Christian was to be a pastor, that there's no other occupation and that there's no other way to please God. Christianity is a faith-based relationship, but what I turned it into was a religious works righteousness religion. And that's not right. And the sad part is, when I became religious, I lost sight of who I was. My identity was gone. My dreams out the window. My passions non-existent. All I wanted to do was get to know God more, and there's nothing wrong with that. And all I did was stay cooped up in my own room and study the Word, and I became really isolated, and I became an introvert, which, mind you, is a little weird, because if you knew me in high school or even in college, I was the most outgoing guy, the life of the party, and I loved being in front of people. But when I became really religious, my personality disposition changed, and I became antisocial, and I always flaked on my friends' invitations to hang out, and I just wanted to be by myself. And the thing is, as I became more religious, I became more of a hypocrite to Jesus' teachings. You see, he called us to love people, but in the end, I wasn't doing that because I preferred to be by myself, and I became antisocial. Which brings me to my next point. So when I spent time going through my past posts from about 10 years ago, 15 years ago, 5 years ago even, right? My dream and passion has always been the same. To be an entertainer, and to be more specifically, to be an actor was always the goal. And my goal as to why I want to be an actor was the same as in 2005, because I wanted to uplift people and make a positive impact. But when I became super religious in 2016, it went out the window. I forgot about that. So in 2016, when I got out of the army, I packed my bags and I moved to Korea because I thought that I was going to do that, right? I thought that I was going to be a Korean drama actor, be a model, be in the entertainment industry so that I could fulfill my childhood dream and my inner passion. But that never became a reality because when the opportunities did present itself to me, at that moment, I was becoming more and more and more religious. So I turned them all down and I rejected every offer, every gig, and closed every door. Because I already made up my mind that I was going to be a pastor. And because I was going to be a pastor, I dropped everything to pursue training to be a pastor. And while dropping the dreams and passions that God put into my heart, I neglected the gifts that God gave me. My passion, my talents, my gifts, my heart, etc. Now, when I made this decision at the end of 2016, for me, there was no turning back. I was going to be a pastor no matter what. And along with that, during the journey and the progress to be a pastor, I became a loner, as I mentioned before. And I became really extreme in my views and my beliefs, to the point where I didn't care about burning bridges with my friends, where I didn't care about offending people, where I didn't care about coming off as a jerk. What ended up happening is that I allowed religion to turn me into someone that's full of bitterness and closed-minded. You know, I'm really ashamed of the person that I've become. If little Amos, if I were to go back in time, right, and meet little child Amos, he would be really disappointed in seeing the man that I became today. Because instead of bearing fruit of the Spirit, I legit became a Pharisee. I'm sorry this letter's all over the place, but let's back up and go back to 2015 and 16. I wanted to explain to you why I was so depressed and why I became suicidal when I was in the military. One reason is that my really sad past, my neglected childhood, and being brought up in a broken family, it caught up to me and it consumed me. And it just devastated me. And reason number two, my true passion of becoming an actor was once again put on the back burner because I was in the army. Now, don't get me wrong. I love the privilege to serve my country because I love being an American, as you can see the flag in the background, and I'm patriotic, right? But I don't know if you can relate to this or not, but when you have a true dream and a passion for something, but you're in another position or another occupation and you have to wake up every day and go to work doing something that you would rather be doing something else, it slowly kills you. It's like poison. So my broken past, along with putting my true desires and passions to the side, they came together to ultimately manifest itself in the form of depression. And when I became depressed, I wasn't able to cope with it at all. Because through depression, I was also a very anxious individual, and I struggled with anxiety, and it got to the point where later on that I became really suicidal. But when I became really suicidal, that's when I met God. And when I met God, I felt like my only path was to be a pastor. There was no such thing as having room to be an actor. Once again, do you see the pattern? It was my mistake, and I take full responsibility. But once again, I decided to put my true dream to the side and on the back burner. Even when I was in Korea and I was pursuing acting and I was modeling, there were a lot of opportunities and doors open, but I closed all of them and rejected them. And because I was a Pharisee, I allowed religion to blind me. And one thing to note is that when I was early in the stage of my depression, my roommate, John, he noticed that I was a completely different guy, right? Because at VMI, which is the university that we both attended, I was really spontaneous, upbeat, I was funny, and I was the guy that was just full of energy and always smiling all the time and making an effort to make people laugh. I want to paint a picture so you could see the kind of guy that I was. Even when it was absolutely freezing outside, it's cold, and we're doing push-ups in the mud, and the mud is kicking up on our face, I would be laughing and saying, guys, this is free skincare. That's the kind of personality I had back in university. And John saw that. And John knew my true colors. But when I was going through depression, he knew something changed because I had no desire for anything, and I became really miserable, and I was absolutely negative, pessimistic, and I stopped taking care of myself. I didn't even eat properly. I lost my sense of humor, and I just wasn't me anymore. And during that time, you guys have no idea how much John went out of his way to help me out. And to this day, I have so much gratitude in my heart for what he did for me. For the nights he was there for me when I was crying. For the times that he forced me to get out of bed so that we can go out to eat for dinner together. So that I wasn't left by myself in my room at night just thinking about my past and just making myself more depressed. And just being a good friend overall and being there for me. John, if you're watching this, man, I really love you. And I just want to say thank you so much for everything that you did for me when we were living together in Texas. So moving on. After I got out of the army, I went to Korea. I mentioned that before. I'm sorry, there's going to be a lot of repetitions and I'm going to be repeating a lot. I'm sorry. Essentially, I went to Korea because I needed new scenery. I needed a break. I needed to just start fresh again. And because I wanted to pursue my inner childhood dream of being an actor. And I did, right? I packed my bags and I was in Korea. I was making moves. I had connections with the industry and everything was going well for me. But then that's when I decided to become more and more and more religious. And when I became religious in Korea, another transformation occurred where my personality just changed. I started becoming a jerk to people. And the thing is, Jesus saved us so that we wouldn't have to become religious and legalistic. But in the end, that's what I became. And just thinking about all of that, I just feel so dirty and disgusting and so ashamed of myself. Because I know better than that. But I chose to become a Pharisee instead. Instead of being more Christ-like, I became more like the ones that persecuted Jesus. So let's back up to 2005, when I first started YouTube. And real talk, I just loved being in front of the camera. You see, when I was in 7th grade, I already knew that deep down, I was gonna be an actor one day, and that's what I wanted to do. So I might as well just get a head start and start making YouTube videos and show to the world who I am, Amos, and make people laugh along the way and uplift people. But being in front of the camera was something that's not new to me or not something that's foreign to me, but it's something that I grew up with as well. Now hear me out. I was always the entertainer, okay? When I was younger, I went to a performing arts school, and I was one of the best in my grade for singing, dancing, and acting. Every single time that my school had a performance or an act, I was the main talent. So I was always a natural performer, an entertainer. And going through public school, I was also the news anchor that gave the announcements for the school, and I made it entertaining because it was just in my blood to just be an entertaining guy. And my classmates, they recognized that, and in our yearbook superlative, my classmates voted me most likely to become a future comedian. Now, if you grew up with me and you went to West Springfield High School or Washington Irving Middle School, and you remember this, I mean, you know I'm not making any of this up. But here's the thing. The reason why it was so easy for me as an adult to suppress my dreams was because as a child, the adults around me didn't support me. As a matter of fact, they knew that I always wanted to be an actor, but they said, you shouldn't do that. You can't do that. You'll never make a living from that. You're not good enough. You're Asian. And they always gave me excuses as to why I shouldn't, couldn't, can't be an actor. And so it was ingrained in me. Now there's one story that's really memorable. You see, when I was a small child, for a short, brief period of time, I actually lived in California. And when I lived in California, I remember distinctively hearing open castings for a Disney show, right? An audition, looking for a character of my age and ethnicity. And I remember begging my parents to please take me so I can at least try out. Because I knew that I could act, I knew that I had the talent, and I knew that I had the passion to do it. But ultimately, I got the same speech. No, you're not allowed to do that, you can't do that, you shouldn't, you wouldn't, you couldn't, you name it. And so growing up as a child, turning into an adolescent, and as a teenager, my dream that God gave to me was never approved by the adults around me. And so I had to go out of my way to make it a reality. And that's why in 2005, when I picked up the camera, that was my way of becoming the entertainer that I was never allowed to become. And so do you think it's a coincidence in 2005 that I was doing YouTube, or in 2011? And that's why YouTube for me is such a special place. Because although I wasn't allowed to do it as a child, YouTube was a way for me to do it in secret, behind closed doors in my room, and do YouTube. Because although I wasn't allowed to be on TV shows or in films, my passion of being an actor was so strong that I would wait for them to go to work, and I did it. I made YouTube videos when they weren't home, and I uploaded them. Now I want to continue exploring that theme about how I always wanted to be an entertainer and actor. You see, when I was in the military, and when I was at military university, I still made YouTube videos. And the funny thing is, you know how I deleted all my videos from middle school going into high school because I was scared about what people thought of me? Well, there's a pattern and there's gonna be a trend. When I graduated high school, when I was getting ready to go to the military university, I deleted all my videos again because I was scared that people were gonna find it, make fun of me, and hold it against me. So once again, I had to start all over again. But I didn't start YouTube again until after my first year at the military university. after my freshman year. Like I had that deep down desire like, yo, I need to start entertaining again. I need to be in front of a camera again. I can't. So during my very brief summer vacation, I picked up a camera, I filmed myself talking, and I uploaded it. Because deep down, even though I was at a military university as a cadet, I knew that one day I was always gonna be an actor, and it's wise for me to stay brushed up on my skills as an entertainer. And as I progressed through my cadetship at the military university, making YouTube videos was an outlet for me to remind myself that I'm still human, that there are people out there that I can uplift and inspire and encourage and make them laugh through my personality. Because when you're in the military, it's all about being uniform, being the same, and focusing on military tactics. But deep down inside, there was an entertainer and an actor that was there, that was just waiting to just burst out. And the funny thing is, from 2011 to 2013, while I was still a cadet at the military university, during my short summers or vacations, such as like Thanksgiving furlough or Christmas, I actually went out to do auditions for films, for TV shows, for projects. And sometimes I would get callbacks, but in the end, every single time, I was rejected. And there was actually one role that I had the opportunity of doing, but their film dates did not line up with my availability, because my commitment to service and my role as a military cadet came first. Service is first, and I'll never regret that. So there was some chances for me to do it, but the stars never lined up in my favor. It was either I was too inexperienced or the dates didn't line up. And I remember one time, the casting director looked at me and said, I really love your energy, Amos. You're really passionate, you're enthusiastic about this, but you don't have a technique. You're not trained in this. So I recommend that you get acting classes. But the thing is, I couldn't take acting classes. And so looking back, I don't blame any of them for rejecting me. I had the passion, I just didn't have the technique. And that's a learning lesson for me and for you. It doesn't matter how enthusiastic you are about something. If you're genuinely not good at it, you probably can't make a career of it. So it's best left as a hobby. So I took those critiques from my failed auditions in 2011, 2012, 2013. I made a decision to get trained, to be better, and to learn a technique. And that happened when I was in Korea. When I first moved to Korea, right after I got out of the military, my intent was, all right, I'm a newborn Christian, and I'm here to pursue entertainment, to fulfill my childhood dream. And so during that time, I did get trained, I did learn how to act, and I got to experience what the entertainment industry is like. But it was exactly during that same time period that I became religious. And so what ended up happening is I ditched the entertainment industry cold turkey, no explanations, and decided to do God's work instead. So let's talk about 2016 to 2017. When I decided to quit the entertainment industry in Korea cold turkey and pick up motivational speaking instead. And when I did motivational speaking, I always saw it as a way to inspire others with my words and my past, my story, but also it was an opportunity for me to practice sermon speaking, because in the future, I thought that I was going to be a pastor. Now here's the crazy part. In 2016 and 2017, you could see a radical change happen, and it's not a change that was for the better. Because before 2016, I was always a chill dude that was laid back and funny, but I was still good at public speaking. But in 2016, when I decided to pick up motivational speaking as I trained to become a pastor, something in my voice changed. I became really aggressive with my tone, and especially the way that I delivered my words. And that's something I never did before. And I didn't realize this until I started looking at my own videos a couple months ago, and I noticed, like, is that really me speaking? Like, bro, I come off scary and so aggressive. And as I progressed from 2016 to 2017, I got further and further deeper into doing motivational speaking on YouTube. And while that was happening slowly, I was putting myself in a religious bubble and not actually loving others, especially those that are different from me. I lost sight of it all, and I forgot what it means to love my neighbor. I became really judgmental and became a hypocrite during the process. And the thing is, my reason to be a pastor, it wasn't with the right heart. You see, I was trying to be a pastor in order to earn God's love. through my works, through my preaching, when all I have to do is look at the cross where he died for me to understand that I'm good enough as it is. I don't have to do these works to earn his love. But I lost sight of it all because I was a Pharisee. So I kept doing motivational speaking throughout the year in 2017. And towards the end of the year, around November and December, that's when I became really extreme. And that's when my identity as Amos was non-existent. Amos who? My dreams and passions? I already forgot about that a year ago. I lost sight of myself in the process. And some of you guys have chosen to stick with me through this whole process, and you'll probably know exactly what I'm talking about. The transition from 2013 to 15 to 17. You know the changes that I'm talking about. And so by the time it got towards the end of 2017, I upped my training to be a pastor, right? And at that time, I really stopped caring about anything. To some degree, it's healthy. But I went overboard. Like, not caring about what other people think about you, that's awesome. But me, I took it another step and I went too extreme and I went, I lost my mind. My mentality at the time was forget everything but the Bible. And it showed itself physically, outwardly, right? I donated all of my clothes. I stopped caring about the way that I look, although I kept claiming that I had self-respect, but it wasn't the right type of self-respect. And so I started wearing the same clothes every day because I kept saying it doesn't matter what my outfit is like. What's important is my Bible. And I canceled plans all the time. If I didn't think that it was godly, I wasn't gonna be there. And so as I became more religious, I became worse and worse of a person. And I genuinely asked myself, would I be friends with me if I was someone else? And the answer would have been no, I wouldn't be friends with me. I was someone that wasn't very pleasant to be around because of my radical beliefs and how extreme I got with religion. And so in the end, I became a loner to the point where I genuinely believed that it was healthy for me to be by myself and away from the world that was full of temptations and full of bad stuff. I became a loner. And so my personality became introverted, where I'm starting to see that I'm not an introvert at all, but rather it's because I was in a spell. And when I dug the hole deeper and deeper into becoming religious, I became freaking weird. I became so weird and religious that I turned more judgmental. Instead of having compassion for God's people, I was judging left and right and being a hypocrite. And that's not healthy at all. That's not what it means to be a follower of Jesus. I didn't understand that though. And so when I look back, I feel like I started to become a monster in mid-2017. So around May, June, July. That's when I think I lost sight of who Amos was as a person, and I just became a straight up monster in the form of being a Pharisee. And when I became a Pharisee and a monster, that's when I just kept preaching and preaching on deaf ears. I was Bible thumping left and right and just not being a good person overall. And the thing is, although I wasn't thinking logically or with reason, my intellect was still intact. I knew that my strategy of just Bible thumping and preaching on deaf ears, I knew it wasn't working and it didn't work, but I kept doing it anyways. That's how stubborn I became and how religious I had turned into. And in the end of 2017, I moved to California to continue my training to be a pastor. But I just want to take a pause right there. Do you think it's a coincidence that out of all the seminary schools in the world, that God led me to the one that's right behind Hollywood? You know, I could sit here and be bitter and be angry about how much time I wasted and let my regrets of my past choices to consume me, but I can see how this is all part of God's plan for me. Out of all the freaking schools in the world for me to continue my training to be a pastor, He allowed me to go to California right next to Hollywood. Do you think that's a coincidence? Just like in middle school in 7th grade, do you think it's a coincidence that I picked up my camera to film myself even though the adults around me kept saying, you can't do it, you should not do it, you're not allowed to do it? Do you think that was a coincidence as well? Do you think it's a coincidence that when I was in elementary school, I was always winning the role to be the top dancer, the top singer, the top performer? Do you think it's a coincidence that when I was in high school, I was selected to be the news anchor for the TV announcements? Do you think it's a coincidence that even when I was at VMI, my military university, that I was going out and doing auditions for acting and still making YouTube videos? It was all a part of God's plan. But to get back on point and to the story, in 2018, when I started my training to be a pastor, that's when I lost my passion for the camera. And when I look back, the damage was done. I was so deep into religion, and you have to realize that I had this epiphany about everything that's going on right now, everything that I'm sharing with you 4 to 5 months ago. I knew what was going on, and I had a wake-up call, but I wasn't fully awake. As a matter of fact, I kept sleeping. I ignored the facts, and I said, whatever, forget my dreams, I'm just gonna keep preaching the Bible. And I said to myself, the damage was done. There's no way that I can go back and join the entertainment industry and be an actor again. There's just no way. Or so I thought. So this summer, God opened an opportunity for me, a chance for me to be in front of the camera again, something that I absolutely love and enjoy doing. And I remember at the time I was thinking, oh my goodness, what is this opportunity? Like, should I do it? Should I? And deep down I knew I should do it, right? But before accepting the offer, I prayed about it. I kept saying, God, if it's your will, I'll go do it. And if I go do it, please let it be the Spirit that speaks through me and not Amos. So I went to this filming opportunity and I portrayed myself to the world. And people saw me as Amos, the Amos that I used to be before I became religious and I lost sight of myself, and before I became crazy and extreme. I was able to leave a positive impact on the people that received me. And that project over the summer was a huge wake-up call. It was literally the last straw for me to snap out of this spell and realize that just because I'm a Christian, it doesn't mean that I have to be a pastor. And during that wake-up call, I was able to remember again my passion, being in front of a camera, but also loving people and loving God. I was able to feel it again, and it was a feeling that I missed so much. I was just like, wow, that's what it's like to be in a studio again and to just speak to the camera and to just be doing me. And I'm gonna share with you what makes me such a big hypocrite and a judgmental person. You see, I always loved people. Even when I was younger and I was just going through some tough times, I never lost sight of how good people truly are. But when I became religious and super extreme, I said that I love people, but deep down it became more of a burden and a chore rather than loving people with a genuine heart. Instead of helping people because I want to help people, it became more of something like a duty, like a chore, like a burden. Why did I even think that way? Well, when I became super religious, I also became really delusional. And that's such a contradiction from the example that Jesus showed us when he was here during his earthly ministry. You see, the guy that I look up to, Jesus Christ, right? He led by example of what it means to love people, especially when he loved that Samaritan. But the question is, how can I truly love people if I judge them so hard and isolated myself from those that were different from me? And that brings me here today. I'm sorry, I don't know why I keep waving this pen, but that brings me here today in August 2018. I'm going to follow my dreams, the dreams that God gave me of becoming an actor while loving people and loving God. And in the end, that will equate to a happy Amos. Because when I became religious, I kept saying, I'm so happy, I'm happy. But deep down, I was empty. I was miserable and I was sad. I was not happy. Yeah, I had passion for God and I still have passion for God. But the thing is, I lost sight of everything to the point where I was just, I was sad. And I think that's really important, guys. I think having that inner peace and happiness, especially with your choices and decisions and the way you live your life, I think that's really important. So instead of being a preacher or a pastor in a pulpit, instead, I'm gonna allow God to use me as an instrument in the entertainment world, through like YouTube, acting, modeling, and all sorts of different projects, and blessing those that I cross paths with. Because if we're gonna be honest, the entertainment industry needs Jesus. There's a lot of hurting going around, there's a lot of pain going around, and there's a lot of sadness. And I wanna be the change that I wanna see in the world by loving those that are around me, by allowing God to use me as his instrument. I wanna be a salt and light in this world as an actor in the entertainment industry. and honor God by being the change that we need in this world, and using my influence to inspire others to love one another, but also for me to share the love to people. You know, when I was super religious, I felt like there was only one way for me to make God pleased with me, and that's by being a minister. But here's the thing, whereas I thought that the only way to get to the number 10 is 5 plus 5, which is by being a pastor, what about 7 plus 3? What about 6 plus 4? What about 9 plus 1? There are many different ways, routes, and methods of doing God's work, and it still equals 10. Being a pastor is not the only way to serve fellow humans. There's many other ways. I mean, think about Chick-fil-A, In-N-Out, Forever 21, all these Christian businesses. The point is that there's many different ways to do God's work. Being a pastor is not the only way. So that's why here on out, I'm choosing to do God's work through my occupation. And if you're an individual watching this, thinking the way that I used to, thinking that 5 plus 5 is the only way to 10, I just want to say something to you really quick. God loves us, no matter who you are. He loves us because we're His creation, and He's interested in our work as creators. We're made in His image as creators. So with that said, God loves that cashier at Walmart. He loves the chef cooking up all that good food behind the scenes at a restaurant. He loves that stay-at-home mom. He loves even the students, and He loves entertainers. It's not just pastors that are favored upon and that bring glory to God. Anyone and everyone can bring glory to God in their own unique way. Alright, that's enough talking for today. I'm gonna wrap this video up. So my closing remarks. I'm finally here. I'm awake, and this right here is my declaration that I'm going to pursue my dream of breaking through as an actor in Hollywood. I don't have it all figured out, and I know there's gonna be a lot of hardships down the road for me, but it's time that I start prioritizing my dream again. Watch out for me, world. I'm coming. And if you choose to support me, then thank you. Genuinely, thank you. And if the damage is done and you hate me, I still love you. But with all that said, I'm really excited for what the future holds for me. So going forward, 3 quick things. Number 1, I'm changing my name from Woojung to Amos. Amos is my American name, and the reason why I'm no longer using Woojung is because when I moved over to Korea to become an actor over there, I used the name Woojung because it's Korea. But here, it's America, and it's appropriate for me to finally use my American name again. So the second thing, you're probably curious, yo Amos, what's gonna happen to this channel? I'm not going to delete it. As a matter of fact, I'm going to rebrand myself and to show you guys my progress and journey as an actor in the USA while I try to break through. Which brings me to point number 3. I'm going to be actively seeking and auditioning for roles and taking acting classes and compiling a reel and finding an agent and all of that jazz. So if you see a tree in the background that looks like me in a Netflix show, that's probably me. Alright guys, I'm gonna see you in the next one. Thanks for keeping it real. Nothing but love from me to you. Alright, let's do this thing.